Natural disasters are one of the most terrifying things that can happen to us. From earthquakes to volcanic eruptions, tsunamis to extreme weather events such as hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, our planet has a way of reminding us just how small and fragile we are in comparison. And with so much of the world now at risk due to climate change, these life-threatening events are only going to become more frequent. But every so often a disaster is so catastrophic that it not only destroys entire cities and landscapes, but wipes out almost all traces of human life in its path. In an instant, the residents of these places are forced to abandon their homes and flee for their lives, leaving behind everything they've ever known and loved. Some never return home again. Some do, and find their communities changed forever. But others step back into a scene straight from a zombie movie, where no one around them has survived the disaster. And it's this last group whose stories we're going to focus on today. From the great Galveston Hurricane of 1900 to the Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004, here are some of America's deadliest natural disasters and the survivors who lived to tell the tale. The Great Galveston Hurricane of 1900. On September 8, 1900, one of the most violent tropical cyclones in U.S. history slammed into the small port city of Galveston, Texas, measuring 130 miles per hour or 210 kilometers per hour. The storm surge was as high as 15 feet or 4.6 meters, causing catastrophic flooding. The full force of the hurricane completely caught Galveston off guard, and within hours the island was underwater. Strong winds overturned rail cars, tore apart buildings, and sent giant palm trees crashing to the ground. Roofs were ripped clean off houses, shattering windows and sending glass flying through the air like shrapnel. People ran for higher ground, but were quickly swept away by the rising floodwaters. The eruption of Mount on May 8, 1902, at around 9:30 p.m., a violent earthquake shook the French colonial city of Saint-Pierre on the Caribbean island of Martinique. Residents emerged from their homes to find the ground trembling beneath their feet. They looked to the nearby volcano, Mount Peel, and saw that its summit had exploded in a plume of smoke and ash. For a moment, nothing happened, and then hot ash began to rain down onto the unsuspecting residents below. Others who lived further away raced for the hills, only to be met by a cloud of gas and pumice that engulfed the entire city. Buildings were engulfed by fire, and hundreds perished in the debris. The air was thick with ash and dust, blotting out the sun and turning day into night. Hot gases mixed with falling pumice created a deadly mixture that burned anyone unfortunate enough to breathe it in. The few who did survive the initial blast were faced with another horrifying sight. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing but a wasteland of fire and death. Many of the bodies were burnt beyond recognition, if they hadn't been blown into the sea. The town was in ruins, and there wasn't a single person anywhere to be seen. Those who had fled to the hills found nothing but scorched earth. No animals, plants, or even insects could be found anywhere. The whole place was a radioactive wasteland. The few remaining survivors soon realized that they were alone. All around them were scenes of unimaginable horror and death, yet there was no one to help. Aid didn't arrive for several days, and when it did, it was too late. Every living thing in Saint-Pierre had either been incinerated or poisoned by the toxic gases. This is considered to be one of the deadliest volcanic eruptions in human history, killing an estimated 30,000 people. The Yungay landslide. On August 1962, a 7.9 magnitude earthquake struck northern Peru, creating a landslide that would go on to become the deadliest in recorded history. Measuring half a mile wide and 3 miles long, an estimated 40 million cubic yards of earth and rock cascaded down a mountainside at 180 miles per hour, burying the town of Yungay in its path. Homes were crushed like toys, and people were hurled through the air. By the time the debris settled, 4,500 people were dead. Eyewitnesses reported seeing walls of rock moving at incredible speeds, trees torn from the ground and thrown into the air, and huge boulders bouncing along like balls. Houses were completely obliterated, and people were tossed through the air like rag dolls. Roads and railways were completely destroyed, and even the nearby beach was buried under a layer of mud and debris. The few survivors who remained conscious stumbled through the debris, coughing and choking on dust. When they looked around, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Whole neighborhoods had vanished, and their loved ones were nowhere to be seen. Those who had managed to escape the initial landslide found themselves surrounded by a landscape of total devastation. The air was thick with dust and debris, and the ground was littered with the bodies of the dead. The lucky ones had died instantly. Others had been trapped in the rubble for days, slowly dying of dehydration and exposure. In the aftermath, survivors struggled to find food, water, and medical care. Many died from their injuries or from disease and infection. Of the 4,500 people who died in the landslide, only a fraction were ever recovered. The rest remained trapped under the debris, lost forever. The 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami. On December 26, 2004, a 9.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. Measuring 122 miles or 200 kilometers across, it was the third largest earthquake of the 20th century. However, unlike most earthquakes, the damage it caused extended far beyond the immediate vicinity of the epicenter. As the quake struck, the ocean floor was displaced, sending a massive tsunami wave hurtling toward the coast of Indonesia and other countries bordering the Indian Ocean. In Thailand alone, more than 5,300 people died, including 2,600 tourists from around the world. Entire villages were wiped off the map, flattened by the towering wall of water that surged onto the land. The wave was so powerful that it even knocked trains off their tracks and swept them away. Buildings were leveled, and boats were thrown onto the beach like bath toys. People desperately fled to higher ground, but there was nowhere to go. The tsunami wave was so large that it hit inland for miles, destroying everything in its path. Survivors described scenes of total havoc and destruction. Homes were reduced to rubble, corpses littered the beach, and the air was filled with the stench of death. Many of those who survived the initial wave were soon faced with another horrifying sight. Corpses washed ashore, many of them foreigners who had been on holiday in Thailand. The country had never seen anything like this before, and there was no one to identify or claim the bodies. Thai authorities struggled to cope with the influx of corpses, and many were left to rot on the beaches. For weeks, the survivors were faced with the grim task of identifying the bodies of their loved ones and making funeral arrangements. But even this was not enough to bring them peace. Many were haunted by the memories of the disaster and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Some tried to rebuild their lives and move on, but they were never the same again. Others were so traumatized that they abandoned their homes and never returned.